Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It's our Wednesday show, and it's action-packed today, Sam.
Action-packed?
Action-packed. We got the great JT O'Sullivan. The great, he's worthy of the great tag, I think, for us. The great JT O'Sullivan, QB School, coming out within the hour, to break down some quarterback play. We got the Shouty Shows segments. We got our Monday Night Football review. We get the Mailbag. We're getting some great questions and things to discuss coming out of the Mailbag. We got news to discuss. Full show.
Action-packed.
It is action-packed. First, I want to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. I'll be dropping my lineup here later today, my weekend lineup. But Prize Picks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You can download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CheckTheMic. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CheckTheMic on Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. So you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks right now with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks puts their members first. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Like last week when my picks hit.
Cha-ching.
All 4, including Caleb Williams, more than half a yard. So I'll be doing my lineup later today, and you guys can join us as well. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CheckTheMic. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Don't forget the Discord. A lot going on in the Discord. We have our picks contest. We have everything with Prize Picks, our own little channel there, so we can have some fun. So be sure to join the Discord. The link is in the description. Let's review Monday Night Football. We had the doubleheader. 2 games to talk about. Miami Dolphins, Tennessee Titans. Titans got their first win, 31-12. Again, if you're just a YouTube subscriber here, you may have heard us recapping these games on Monday night. We'll go through it a little bit here today, though. Second game of the doubleheader was Detroit, 42-29 over Seattle. Let's talk Titans-Dolphins, though. Titans getting their first win. Will Levis hurt early in the game after throwing a bad interception, then trying to make a superhuman play where he hurt his shoulder. Mason Rudolph comes in, and Titans get the win. Dolphins offense looks horrible.
Yeah.
I know that's the story.
Yeah, Dolphins offense wasn't sparked to life by Tyler Huntley coming in. Now, he'd only been there a very short period of time, so it was probably unreasonable to expect that to happen. He had a couple of, they had some missed opportunities. There were throws there to be made. He underthrew Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill had to turn DB and break up an interception essentially in the end zone on a badly underthrown ball. Later on, he badly overthrew Tyreek Hill. But also, he had a play where he hit Jalen Waddle over the middle. Waddle drops it. The entire offense was not necessarily functioning, not just Tyler Huntley. But yeah, again, this funny dynamic of we know that the Shanahan system generally, whether it's McDaniel's version, Bobby Slowick's version, Shanahan himself, we know that system does enhance the play of quarterbacks. But that doesn't mean that the quarterback isn't also very important to the functioning of that offense. There's a difference between when C.J. Beathard is out there running Shanahan's system and Brock Purdy, or even Jimmy G when he was healthy. The quarterback makes a difference. And clearly Mike McDaniel's system absolutely revived the career of Tua, but Tua looks like a perfect quarterback for that particular version of the system. And any other quarterback that he's put in there, it doesn't quite look the same. It doesn't function.
I think it hinders our ability to have that nice black and white analysis, right? Because we all want to, because you always talk about the credit pie, right? Quarterback versus coach, credit pie. Oh, it's got to be all Mike McDaniel. Tua was no good. I mean, this is reality though. Tua wasn't good his first 2 years until Mike McDaniel got there. Same thing with Shanahan, as you mentioned. Did he put up a lot of yards with Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard? Yes, but they didn't win games at the same place that they did. So yeah, it makes the black and white analysis of who deserves the credit and the blame here. But clearly Tua makes this thing function better. We've said that for a while. Even with a guy that I think has a pretty good track record like Teddy Bridgewater a few years ago, the offense just wasn't the same.
And it's so funny.
Tua does make it run better.
Everyone wants to have an analysis that only exists in black and white terms. We have now gone from Mike McDaniel is the smartest coach in the NFL. He's a step ahead of everybody, right? He's the guy on the cutting edge, pushing boundaries, pushing the envelope, coming up with these systems that break the league, to 2-3 weeks without Tua, his offense is now too dumb to work, right? Like, it's unimaginative. I saw an article. It was like, this offense is unimaginative. It's basically dumb. It's too stupid to work. It's like, where's the intelligence of working? Like, 2 weeks, he's gone from the smartest coach in the league to too dumb to construct an offense around a backup quarterback. Like,
that's good. That's good analysis.
Yeah.
It's good analysis. I mean, sometimes it just comes down to the quality of your backups.
Yeah.
Maybe Skylar Thompson's just not that good, and Tyler Huntley's been – maybe if they had Tyler Huntley the entire offseason – Pro Bowler. This whole thing looks different.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that there's a chance that – but when you think about what made Tua – like, what was the defining characteristic of Tua in this offense versus, say, Stroud in Slowick's offense or any quarterback that Shanahan has had working for him, right? Tua has had a faster average time to throw than any of those guys, right? He has been – they work the middle of the field, so do the Shanahans. They work it fast, and Tua does it with timing and puts the ball in a spot, waiting for those speedy guys to run into that spot. Like, whatever about Tyler Huntley, Pro Bowler, and what he could be, et cetera, there's an offense to be made where Tyler Huntley functions and makes it look pretty good. He's done that in Baltimore, filling in for Lamar Jackson. He's not that type of quarterback. Like, it's not going to look like that. So it's not just how good is your backup quarterback, but it's like, what style is your backup quarterback? We brought this up before when, for some reason, the Bills kept finding a backup quarterback for Josh Allen that could not have been less like Josh Allen, right? Like, giant-armed, super freak quarterback. Let's go and find a small, noodle-armed, like, accurate passer to be his backup. It's just so I think there's something to that as well. Like, not only just is your backup good or bad, that's going to determine whether or not you win games or not, but does he also play the game in a similar style to your starter?
On the other hand, you have the other things happening around the league right now are Matt LaFleur using Malik Willis for 2 weeks, being 2-0 with Matt LaFleur. I mean, with Malik Willis and 0-2 with his starter, Jordan Love. But LaFleur building and crafting an offense that did fit to Malik Willis. Granted, for 2 weeks.
Right.
I don't think that thing sustains the way it did, but I
think
did it for 2 weeks, including against the Titans.
Baltimore have done this in the past. Like, they have, since they got Lamar Jackson, they have then gravitated towards Lamar Jackson imitation quarterbacks, like guys like Tyler Huntley, right? Like, I think if you have an offense that very clearly works in perfect sync with a specific quarterback and a specific style of quarterback, it only makes sense to me to, when possible, find backups that at least fit the same style so that you don't have to completely torpedo and blow up your entire offense when the backup comes in. Unless, a guy like Malik Willis, whatever you want to say about him, is a special athlete with a special arm, and we can create a game plan around that specifically. So there are exceptions to that, I think, if the guy is a good enough athlete or whatever to do something. But otherwise, part of this is Miami has gone from a quarterback that plays the game in a very extreme style to multiple backups that are not on that side of the spectrum, let alone good enough at it.
From Tennessee's perspective, I thought they played a really good game. They dominated up front. I'll give a shout out in a minute to the rookie Tavondre Sweat, but story coming out of Tennessee, Levis, again, he plays the game like a maniac, gets hurt, doesn't change his playing style whatsoever. Had the shoulder injury, looked like he was trying to get back into the game. They put Mason Rudolph in. I mean, Rudolph didn't do a ton, threw for under 100 yards, but he just like a big dig route before the half to put them in field goal range to go up 9-3. And a game like that ended up being a huge play, even though the Titans ran away with it in the end. But I could see, we talked about this Monday night, Brian Callahan didn't draft Will Levis. The GM, Rand Carthon, did. They're staggered. Carthon got there a year before Brian Callahan. You're sitting there at 1-3 now. I could see Callahan maybe saying, man, I think Rudolph might run this offense a little bit better. And again, what's going on around the league? You've got the second chance quarterbacks making good around the league. And Rudolph looked like that guy a little bit down the stretch last year with Pittsburgh. It's going to be an interesting dynamic in Tennessee. I know that Callahan came out and said, Will Levis is our starter.
Yeah.
But the next boneheaded decision Levis makes, and he's averaging 1.5 per game.
Yeah.
1.5, like, worst decision of the week type of plays per game. 1 to 2. The next time that comes up, they're going to talk Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that forget the launching himself Superman style to try and pick up the first down thing. That came after he'd thrown a ridiculous interception to a defensive lineman that he admitted himself he just never saw, right? So now, if you think in the 4 games, he's had utterly ridiculous pick six, throwing it off, falling over, trying to get it out, throws a pick six. We've got the meme launching it from horizontal towards a guy, lateral play, which, as we said, was the only way you could make the pick six worse. He found 2 different ways that it could be worse and did them both on the same play. He then has the Jair Alexander is staring down this play pre-snap, and he throws it at him anyway, pick six, right? And then this one, which was a 4th variety of catastrophic play, where it's like, oh, look, there's a defensive lineman dropping into this space that I simply never saw. So in 4 weeks, we've had 4 of the worst turnovers that you're going to see all season long from any quarterback. He's had 4 of them, and all 4 have been completely different. So you found 4 different ways of having one of the worst plays that you can have as a quarterback. That will undo an incredible amount of good work. So you're right. Mason Rudolph really didn't do much when he came in. What he did do, however, was not that, right? Yeah. Like, Mason Rudolph simply gave Brian Callahan a game where the quarterback did nothing outrageously stupid from when he went in. And that's big. Like, we've seen already how frustrated Callahan is getting with Will Levis during each one of these terrible plays. He's getting, because he's like, you reach a point where you're just like, I don't know what to do with that. If you can't see that that's a bad plan, how do I help you, right? Rudolph looks like he's not going to do that. So that's going to be tempting to Callahan the next time Levis does one of those ridiculous plays, which so far he has shown no ability to stop himself from doing.
That's what I'm saying. In the NFL's in this world where if you don't show something by year 2, we're moving on from you. And Callahan not attached to Will Levis, right? Not necessarily his guy or his choice. So that's going to be something interesting to keep an eye on. I want to give a shout out to T'Vondre Sweat, the rookie 2nd-round defensive tackle for the Titans. I mean, one of the best defensive tackle games I've seen all season. We're 4 weeks in, but the 360-pounder, you've got this lateral run game from Miami. They were trying to run wide several times, and you've got Sweat at 360 pounds running up and down the line of scrimmage, making plays. If you're watching YouTube, you could watch him when he lines up at nose against Aaron Brewer, who's 270. It is hilarious. But Brian Baldinger, we're showing that on the screen right now. Baldy had a really good Baldy breakdown showing all of the plays that Sweat made, and he was, immovable at the point of attack and also mobile up and down the line of scrimmage. It was a 91.2 PFF run defense grade. I thought Sweat was outstanding in this game and really fun to watch him. The other point was he played 47 snaps, Sam. I looked that up. That's the 3rd most snaps he's ever played in a game between Texas and here. And he had 5 years at Texas. So durability was a question. He was out there in the 4th quarter still making plays. So really impressed by T'Vondre Sweat in this game.
He looked great. And as you said, moving laterally was a big part of his performance in this game. Like, you look at a guy like that, 365 pounds, and you're like, that's easy. We just move laterally. He can't run with this, right? He can. He can move in a way that you don't think a guy that size can be able to move. I was thinking about this because we have a little bit of a rookie segment coming up later. I'm on a staggering run of catching L's in terms of draft predictions and prospects. We'll get to a few of the mistakes coming up. I do, however, I really like T'Vondre Sweat. I said that guy, if you think he can play,
a little confidence boost.
I just needed there's a W somewhere in here, right? Surely one of these draft evals is correct, surely. But I said, if you think T'Vondre Sweat can play more than 25, 30 snaps a game, this is a first-round talent because of what he can do. He's not what you think he is when you picture 365-pound nose tackle. That's very much not what he is. He is an every-down, absolute game wrecker. If you think at that size he can play more than that, a decent enough volume of snaps. So far in the NFL, he is, and he's playing incredibly well.
I don't want to, go too far here, but I think that game's better than any game Jordan Davis has shown in. Jordan Davis went 13th overall, right? In 2+ years for the Eagles. Davis, we had extensive discussions about what's the worth of a 340 nose tackle. What can he do? Do they have the durability? I thought Sweat's game better than anything I've seen from Davis so far to this point in his career. We'll talk a little Seahawks-Lions in a second, but first, we've had an amazingly first few weeks of the season with our 33rd Team League on Locker. So if you love showcasing your NFL knowledge with some skin in the game, Locker is a must-have in your gaming arsenal. Locker contests combine the strategic elements of DFS with the thrill of sports betting into an exciting new game format. Simple to enter and easy to learn, Locker contests allow users to test their wits by answering questions in real time during live NFL games, with the goal being to accurately predict the upcoming action on the field. By correctly answering straightforward, game-based, multiple-choice questions like which Falcons player will have the most receiving yards on the next drive, or what will be the result of the Bucs' next drive, Thursday Night Football coming up here. Users can earn points and move up the leaderboard in pursuit of cash prizes. Many contests are hosted by Locker's expansive partner network of athletes, celebrities, influencers like Sam, and chat functionality embedded directly into the app. Users can directly engage with the contest host as well as other participants. Sign up for Locker through 33rd Team. Use code 33rd and you get a $50 deposit match. Join today and discover an entirely new and unique way to cash in on your NFL viewing experience. Come join Sam and I as we play along. Again, the code is 33rd. Over at Locker, you get a $50 deposit match. Second half of the Monday night doubleheader. Detroit Lions 42, Seattle Seahawks 29. Little bit more back and forth than the Titans and Dolphins game. A lot more scoring in this one. Jared Goff finishes the game 18 of 18 for 292, 2 touchdowns. Also caught a touchdown from co-worker Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7-yard touchdown in there. We saw some big plays from the Lions. We saw some great running back play, good run game. But the Lions move to 3-1 here. Seahawks fall to 3-1 with the loss.
Yeah, much better game, obviously, than the Tennessee-Miami game. Really fun. The Jared Goff, incredible game. Did you see the Dan Campbell bit where they were like, what did you make of Goff being perfect? Literally 18 of 18. He was like, I just gave the game ball to somebody else, so I feel terrible now. I knew he was having a really good game. I didn't realize he was literally 100% completion rate. My bad.
He did get bailed out. There was an offensive pass interference on an overthrow.
Yeah.
He also took 3 sacks, one of which was in the end zone for a safety. But yes, he did not throw any incompletions officially.
And played fantastically. Let's put that out there. This is not, maybe he wasn't perfect in the game, but he was incredibly good. And we had been saying
those games are made up.
What games are made up?
Phil Filchok in 1939.
The most passing yards in a game with 0 incompletions. Jared Goff versus the Seahawks tonight, 292. Frank Filchok in 1939 versus the Brooklyn Dodgers, 179. Pete Beathard in 1966 versus the Oilers, 141.
In a baseball game, the Brooklyn Dodgers?
Arnie Herber in 1945 versus the Steelers, 141.
They were probably like 4 for 4 for 141 back then.
That's right. Dante Koplowitz Fleming.
Dante's had some doozies so far.
Well, Nate Yankee at PFF was pointing out that the NFL has an arbitrary cutoff line of 20 attempts before they start counting these things, so it won't go down as the a perfect game completion percentage in terms of NFL records. When they pull these stats up, this is the best completion rate in a single game ever type of thing. Goff's name won't appear on that, because he hit 18, not 20, which is the random line that they use for cutoff. It is, however, the most completions without an incompletion in a game.
You need some volume there. Aiden Hutchinson, if you include negated plays.
What did he end up with?
17 pressures on 64 rushes. So the two things that are impressed there, he rushed 64 times.
That's insane.
Because obviously there was Geno Smith had to, what was the official... Geno Smith dropped back 73 times. So if you include negated plays,
15 pressures,
17 dropbacks.
Even without the negated, 15 pressures 15. Purely.
And he was the
15
league leader.
Without a sack is pretty impressive as well.
Yeah. 16 hurries, 5 other quick wins. Only actually hit Geno one time. Question in the chat, how did he have 5 sacks against Tampa Bay and nothing against Seattle? A lot of that's on the quarterback, and sometimes you just... Against Tampa, his wins were more dominant. He also had plays where Baker Mayfield just ran into him in that game, right? So that's when we talk about the quarterback having to control their sack rate a little bit, a lot of it depends on them, right? This is why we harp on looking at pass rushers through the lens of how well did you defeat the block in front of you, and then what happens after that Did the quarterback get rid of the ball quickly? Was somebody open? Did the quarterback scramble? Getting to the actual sack is sometimes out of your control. But it was a dominant outing for Hutch, mostly going up against Stone Forsythe at right tackle, a second, third stringer, depending on how you want to look at it for the Seahawks.
I mean, we've done that to death at this stage. Hutchinson hasn't faced a real offensive tackle yet. We can debate what exactly Terrence Steele is at this point in his career. When they face him next week, I think the first real test Aiden Hutchinson is going to get in what is headed towards a Defensive Player of the Year kind of season is the next week against Minnesota, where he's going to face the combination of Darisaw and Brian O'Neill. This is an insane run. I mean, he's basically doubling the next closest guy in terms of pressures in the NFL right now. Aiden Hutchinson has 40 over at PFF and PFF Plus. The next two guys are Carl Granderson and Jonathan Grenard, who each have 22. So he's almost doubling in 4 weeks. He's almost doubling the next closest guy and is averaging 10 a game, which itself is like a threshold mark that guys don't tend to get to.
100 is a big threshold we looked at, right? There's only a handful of guys who have reached 100.
Nobody's ever averaged 10 a game.
Of course not.
Very few players. If you get
on
to 10 a
pace for
game,
170,
right?
That's insane.
If you clear 10 in a game, it's been an insane, absolute destructive force type of game, and he's averaging that in 4 weeks.
60. That's 2 games worth of rushes too for Hutchinson because of all those dropbacks. That's another.
Yeah, he's leading the NFL in rushes by 30.
Yeah, so he's had more volume, but it's impressive in a one-game setting to rush the passer 64 times, as he did. I also have to note Seattle missing essentially their starting defensive line. Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, all out. Impressive outing. I think the Lions were missing Frank Ragnow up front. They were still moving people at the point of attack. You got Jahmyr Gibbs with 2 red zone carries, found the end zone. David Montgomery, I love that 1-2 punch, the way they run. Montgomery had a massive play in the pass game. You just see, I think the weapons on both sides were part of the story, right? Like the Lions have speed, power, and quickness. Jameson Williams did his thing, kind of a busted coverage for 70 yards. He's been doing that almost every week as far as creating massive explosive plays. And then you have, I think, Seattle, their top 4 receivers, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jake Bobo, those guys, pretty good, man. I thought Geno hung tough in a game where they had to work from behind, didn't have the run game much until Ken Walker broke out a couple big runs, but I thought it was an impressive outing by Seattle's offense, just being able to hang tough in there.
Yeah, no, Seattle's offense was good. It's just that they basically weren't stopping Detroit at all in the entire game. Like, credit to them. Geno Smith played well. He was under a lot more pressure than Jared Goff with Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. He played well. DK Metcalf, I thought, other than the fumble, had a really impressive game. He got screwed out of a 2-point conversion as well. I think that probably had a catch there. Seattle on offense was very impressive. You have to just credit Detroit's offense. Like, this is going up against this Mike McDonald defense that's been so good for Seattle in the first few weeks. Now, okay, as you said, missing an entire defensive line. And in particular, the fact that they were all in one spot. Like, they were the injuries were concentrated on that defensive line. That's important because it's way harder to sustain or to withstand a bunch of injuries when they're focused on a specific spot than it is if they're spread evenly throughout the team. So that's important. Like, your defense is not going to function if your starting defensive line is not there. But this Detroit offense basically just steamrolled the entire defense, like top to bottom, dominated them up front, absolutely wrecked them in the secondary, was just incredibly good. Think of that trick play, right? The Amon-Ra St. Brown pass. Number one, that was a great pass. Like, did you see the arc, the rainbow that he put that in? That was his first pass attempt apparently in college or the NFL.
It was perfect.
But the other thing about it is, watch the play. Jameson Williams is like standing in the end zone as another option, just watching the play unfold. Like, he ran a basic route into the end zone and is completely uncovered. He's just basically watching it. Like, oh, look, I get literally the best seat in the house to this Amon-Ra to Jared Goff pass for a touchdown. Like, it was a way easier pass, potentially, to just throw it to Jameson Williams. Point being, complete breakdown again in the Seattle defense. Everything was open.
Did he get a positive for that? Make sure.
It's probably not the time to do it,
It is.
I don't think it is.
The one other thing I want to highlight about this game, you mentioned DK Metcalf having an impressive game. Him and Carlton Davis were pretty much one-on-one the entire game. Carlton Davis, the cornerback from the Lions. The Lions have been playing a ton of man coverage. It was an awesome back-and-forth battle. I think the end results or stats for Davis won't look great. He did give up, what was it, 6 penalties. It was 6 catches for 89 yards, and how many penalties? 4 penalties. But he also had a bunch of big plays in there, pass breakups. He had 3 forced incompletions. That's one of those games where I think the results are going to skew in the receiver's favor. But Carlton Davis, given the assignment, did about as well as he could against DK, who's been fantastic this year.
Yeah, I also think this was not a well-officiated game across the board. And in particular, they were not calling. So this was a really physical battle between receiver and corner. And it wasn't just Davis. Like Terran Arnold as well got flagged, one of which in particular was absolutely ridiculous. But this felt like a kind of, every now and again you get these games between wide receiver and corner where it's a physical fight. It's a battle. They're going toe-to-toe. There's way more contact than you get in a normal game. And smart officials, I think, they loosen it up a bit. They go, okay, this is this type of game. We don't want to throw 10 flags in the game either way on pass interference. Let's just let them play a little bit more, street ball. Let them go, right? And I brought up on our live reaction one, this was like Richard Sherman against Brandon Marshall years ago, right? You could have thrown a flag on basically every snap that those two guys went one-on-one, but a smart official said that would be stupid. Let's just let them go a bit, right? They're both big boys. They can both handle themselves. We're just going to let them fight it out. Instead, in this game, the officials were like, we're going to throw a bunch of flags. And they weren't throwing them both ways. Like, there was a play in the end zone where it was a bad throw. Carlton Davis had position, and Metcalf about wrenched his head off trying to stop the interception, right? Carlton Davis legitimately got up going, where's my flag? Like, if I do that, I'm getting flagged for the 6th time today. Where's my offensive pass interference?
Are we seeing more of those this year where the corner's just going to try to catch the ball? There's contact between both players, and it's like, well, pass interference on the defense.
Yeah, it's
more
just,
of those
I mean,
plays
look,
generally.
A lot of them by the letter of the law are pass interference. But in a game like this, where it's significantly more physical on both sides, I think you need to relax the line a little bit and say, look, they're both committing pass interference on a regular basis here. And if you try and get too technical about it, you're almost certainly going to screw the corner because you're not going to call it the same way offensively. And they didn't. So, Metcalf did not get a clear offensive pass interference penalty when he wrenches Carlton Davis's helmet off his head, attempting to stop an interception. If you're going to call it crazy tight, you have to give the corner his as well.
Anything else on Monday Night Football here before we talk wide receiver trades?
Just to circle back to the Jared Goff thing, we had been saying it was kind of impressive that Detroit was winning and doing it well, despite Jared Goff not playing well for the first couple of weeks. He was fantastic in this game. Like, if Jared Goff has games like
that's
that.
That's what they're capable of doing.
Right, where he's near perfect. This is what Detroit is capable of, like hanging 40 on a really good defense and looking near unstoppable.
Yeah, and you might say, hey, their defense might have some questions, and I just think they're putting their corners on an island, and you might have games like that, but I think their defense overall has potential to be better than last year because they had these spurts where they gave up a lot. But I called them last week a powerhouse as long as Goff isn't turning it over, and I think that's what they showed in this game, what they're capable of, as you mentioned. A lot of talk. Let's talk wide receivers here and trade possibilities. Davante Adams essentially out of Vegas. He's looking for a trade. There was rumors, there was liked tweets and Instagram posts or whatever it was, but Davante Adams tells the Raiders he wants to be traded.
Yeah.
You had something.
I wonder, was that, so the report was that there was an Instagram post about Davante Adams being traded that was liked by Antonio Pierce, right?
I can't stand that.
And somebody had said that nobody had contacted Adams after that, right? Now, was that accidental? Was that on purpose? I need to know the specifics of how that, is this entire situation created by Antonio Pierce liking a thing and then not contacting Adams about it afterwards? And Adams like, well, that's kind of an asshole.
I would also like to point out that likes are not endorsements necessarily. It's just what it was. This is just what social media companies determined the heart is going to be called. Remember, the heart used to be called a favorite on Twitter, and before you had bookmarks on Twitter, you could favorite something because you just wanted to read it later. Or maybe it's bulletin board material for Antonio Pierce, where he's like, oh, you don't want to be here? I'll just remember that. Right? Or it's like, oh, I've got maybe Antonio follows thousands of people and he just wants to remember the thing. He wants to be able to get back to it. So you have to tag it with something, and the only thing you have is a like.
Yeah.
I'm just pushing back on assuming intent based off the name of what the heart is, which is a like.
Okay.
And then projecting that on the person that he likes this, therefore he agrees that Davante Adams has played his last snap. Now, all that said, it comes out a little bit later that he's going to get traded.
Well, the counterpoint would be if he's aware of that, right? Even if that is the dynamic, Antonio Pierce knows that's how it will be taken, and you should probably come up with a different way of bookmarking the thing that you want to read later. Alternatively, if you're actually that ridiculous and you don't even understand this is how it's going to be taken, the second it becomes clear that's how it has been taken, you get on the phone to your superstar wide receiver and say, dude, my bad, I just didn't realize. I was just trying to bookmark it to read later. Sorry, right? Instead, it didn't happen. They just hung him out there, and we're like, nah, nothing.
Either way.
And now he wants out.
Based off receiver last year with how frustrated Davante Adams looked on the sideline, mostly playing with Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, everything felt like this was inevitable anyway. Raiders are sitting here at 2-2. We did see, I think, vintage Davante Adams in week 2. In week 2, in that comeback against the Ravens in the second half, Adams making sideline catches. I mean, he looked fantastic. Other than that, it's just been okay. But look, the Jets were always going to be in the mix, at least for fans to kind of concoct deals, because it's like, hey, they're all in. Aaron Rodgers is there. Rodgers has a Garrett Wilson there, and Alan Lazard, who's getting more attention than Garrett Wilson. As soon as anything went south with New York, you knew that this discussion would happen, and here we are. And then the Saints are supposedly interested as well. And the Saints, of course, have Davante Adams' buddy, Derek Carr. Adams went to the Raiders initially. He had Carr there when they got traded from the Packers. I mean, those are his last two quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr, the last two that I think he likes. I don't know if he liked Jimmy G all that much. So that's what we're looking at here for potential Davante Adams landing spots. The other team we have to mention is the Chiefs now, who lost Rashee Rice. And, of course, everybody's going to speculate any big-name receiver going to the Chiefs because you're down Rashee Rice, you're down Isaiah Pacheco, and, the Chiefs, of course, trying to win a third straight Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs are an option for Davante Adams at all. Number one, I don't even think they would be particularly interested in it. Number two, the Raiders are not going to trade them to the Chiefs. So I just don't think that's – let's bring it up because people will, but that's not an option.
We have to acknowledge the Chiefs with every potential receiver in the league. So that's all I'm doing is acknowledging it. I would agree it's not happening here, but there might be some other options for the Chiefs we could talk about.
I mean, the Jets are the clear obvious one, right? They have to be the sort of leader in the clubhouse for the Davante Adams thing. Number one, they're already all in a way no other team is in the NFL. It's Aaron Rodgers this season. That's basically it. Why not give Aaron Rodgers his favorite wide receiver? If you watch that Netflix thing, the receiver documentary, like there was one point in the season where Davante, it had already kind of gone bad, right, with the Raiders. And he was talking to Aaron Rodgers at some point in the sideline. And it was like he missed him viscerally, It's like he's been so bummed for a while already. And now here's his buddy, Aaron Rodgers. He's like, God, I just missed this, right? I feel like he'd be pretty happy reuniting with Rodgers and the Jets. I think the Jets are desperate enough to make it happen. That one makes sense. I was asking somebody for potential spots that would make sense and could happen. Detroit was a name that came up. Detroit going not all in, but it's like, hey, we got a team that's already rolling. What would Davante Adams on this team look like?
Oh, man. I am usually team stack up the playmakers and who the heck cares? Let it make it work. Davante feels like the guy that needs 10 to 12 targets a game. And just coming out, Goff only
in what way?
I think for his own sake as well. I think he likes being the high volume guy.
No, he might like it, but I think last year showed that he's fine with that. Again, if you watch that Netflix documentary, when they put Aiden O'Connell in there was a really interesting game where, so number one, he was out there battling through a separated shoulder or whatever it was that he had. That's a serious injury for a wide receiver, and he was out there doing it anyway. Number two, at one point, Aiden O'Connell's out there. He's playing a game. The ball goes somewhere else. Aiden O'Connell goes up, like a good quarterback, goes up to his receiver and is like, hey, Davante, they're doubling you. Don't worry, I'll get you yours. Davante's like, don't think about that. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. Like, don't force me the ball. You're the young quarterback. You're going to the right place. I'm doubled. Put it somewhere else. Don't even bring it up. Don't even think about it. Like that, I think he's fine being the selfless wide receiver if it's working, right? So in Detroit, you got to assume it would be, right? They're already cooking. We just talked about how their offense is unstoppable with Goff playing well. If that's working and he's only getting 4 targets a game, I don't think he's going to be upset by it. I think he's cool with that. I don't think he needs, like, he's not the classic diva wide receiver where if I'm not getting 12 targets a game, we're going to have a conversation. I'm upset. He's fine as long as things are working.
Just to highlight what it might cost here, Jason Fitzgerald over the cap has said the number right now to trade for Davante Adams is $13.526 million. So about $13.5 million to trade to him. That number drops about $968,000 per week, right? So because you're talking about remaining 2024 salary here. So again, teams like the Chiefs aren't even in the mix. I believe Jason was also talking about the Saints, who are, at the bottom end of available cap space. Like every team can probably make cap space, but then, eventually it comes back to bite, theoretically. But the Saints would have to restructure. They could restructure everybody and get that money if they really wanted to. And I know they're not opposed to doing that. They have done that type of stuff in the past, but just something to keep an eye on. Like not every team is going to be like, oh yeah, let's go get Davante Adams.
The other team name that came up was Dallas, which would be pretty funny as well.
So I think Dallas makes a lot of sense to me. I think a lot of their issues are in the trenches, but then they've also, nothing against Brandon Cooks, he's just getting a little bit older and I don't think he's as dynamic as he once was. And if you have CeeDee Lamb and Davante Adams out there, now you're saying, hey, let's go win shootouts every week.
And it's another team potentially desperate enough to make a big move.
Yeah, I could see that with the Cowboys. The Saints, the Carr connection, Olave down there, what they've already done with that offense, pretty impressive through 4 weeks. I think that could work.
Do we want to? So we're running a little low on time, but maybe the way of mentioning Amari Cooper, who's another potential wide receiver available. Amari Cooper is one that makes a lot of sense to Kansas City to me. Like, number one, the Browns restructured his contract to make him a lot more tradable. And he's a guy, given that cost, that I think Kansas City could actually look at and say, all right, this one actually makes some sense. It's cheaper to do. He's incredibly good already, and it's not a long-term commitment. Like, that's one I could see Kansas City being interested in.
Definitely. I've been an Amari Cooper fan since he got drafted. Number 4 overall to the Raiders. He's now gone from the Raiders to the Cowboys to the Browns. And we've talked about this for his whole career. He looks great. He looks like an impact player. Mm-hmm. He was a part of Derek Carr's big 2016 season. He was a part of Dak's resurgence, honestly. I mean, Dak statistically went through the roof since they traded for Amari Cooper. And with the Browns, it was kind of hit or miss, but he always does seem to wear out his welcome a little bit. Like he lasts 2 or 3 years, 4 years, whatever it was, and then wears out his welcome. But I think for Kansas City in a potentially desperate situation, also interesting to note, they have not declared a torn ACL for Rashee Rice.
But supposedly a partially torn ACL.
So there's still decisions to be made on what to do with that, if rehab is possible, if there's a potential late season return, I would assume, because they haven't declared him out for the season.
Yeah, but it's more a case of I don't think they know the true extent of the injury yet, because it looks like it's only partially torn. They can't, because they've had a scan, they still don't quite know, which suggests they don't know exactly how bad it is, and they can't know that until swelling, et cetera, goes down. They're able to fully get in there and screw with it. I don't know that that necessarily translates to he can play or whatever. I think it's more a case of like it's just a more complicated injury than it usually is.
You're right. We're up against it, but we'll have more wide receiver trade talk, I'm sure, in the next couple weeks here leading up into the trade deadline. But first, we're going to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has some awesome features for fans. I just got pinged for other games and concerts and various things that I can go to because I used Game Time to go to the Bengals game just a couple weeks ago, just last week, and it was so easy. The little toggle to do all-in pricing so that there's no surprise fees at checkout, I love that. Absolutely love that. So you just toggle it. You just click all-in pricing, boom. You get the exact number that you're going to pay. You get the panoramic view of your seats in the app before you buy it, so you know exactly where you're going to be sitting. You get the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying all tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and then we have a special code for you. It's Check the Mic. You get $20 off your first purchase. Check the Mic. Again, terms apply. Create an account. Redeem the code. Check the Mic. CHECKTHEMIC. You get $20 off the Game Time app. So easy to use, convenient, and some great features to make it just, we're excited to be able to partner with Game Time here because of how easy it is to use. And you get the $20 off using the promo Check the Mic. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Game Time.
We wanted to do a little rookie segment.
Yeah.
And, because you admitted you were off a little bit on Brian Thomas Jr. the other day.
A lot of other people as well, apparently.
Admitted it?
No.
That you were on
catching a hell of a run of L's in terms of draft takes recently.
So some guys that you will call it 2 up, 2 down, and I might just copy your 2 up here. Guys that you were lower on that you maybe have been wrong on here as rookies. I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this a long time. It's still a small sample size world, right? When you had 4 games, that's still a pretty low amount of games to be changing your take, eradicating your priors on a guy. I do, however, think there are at least 2 people that I'm willing to already say I missed this on completely. Brian Thomas Jr., I think, is the biggest one. We were both a lot lower on him than the consensus. He was consensus wide receiver 4, I think, after the big 3. We were a lot lower on him than pretty much everybody else. I was even lower on him than you were, and he's just been a completely different player, just a revelation than I thought he was going to be. I comped him to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a sort of big vertical route tree type of receiver who's inconsistent. He's so much more than that. He's a lot more dynamic. He's able to move in tighter spaces than Valdes-Scantling is, and he can do more than the vertical route tree. I mean, we're seeing that already in Jacksonville. Honestly, the sky looks like it's the limit for him, and right now he's being held back by Trevor Lawrence more than anything else, amazing as that is to say. So I completely whiffed on Brian Thomas Jr. He's a much, much better player than I thought he was. And then the other one, I think, is Braylon Allen. And this is one where I just think he looks like a different player. Like his tape now, he looks more visibly explosive, dynamic, quick, and he's using his size and power in a way he didn't often in college. Like for a guy that big and strong, he wanted to bounce everything outside and play horizontally and not use his size and strength that much. I mean, I would believe it if you told me it's 2 different players, like putting his tape side by side, college to the NFL. Braylon Allen looks like a much better player than I thought.
And I pretty much have the same 2 guys. Because, I mean, I was lower on Brian Thomas Jr. and definitely lower on Braylon Allen. And so I think it would be disingenuous for us to look through offensive linemen. And they could join the up column, right? They could be like, hey, I was lower on this offensive lineman and he's outperforming. I don't know that there's any of those around the league right now.
Right.
But I wouldn't grab a lineman and be like, oh, man, I really missed on him 4 games into his career. There's too much evidence of offensive linemen just taking a longer time to develop. But with Brian Thomas Jr. and Braylon Allen, part of it is just they move
different
so well on an NFL football field. No matter what the production ends up being or whatever, it's like they look like they belong, and they've been impact players through 4 weeks. And as you mentioned, Brian Thomas Jr.'s stats could look that much better. Part of his inconsistency, I think, in college was just, drops here and there. He was body catching, but he looked like a legit deep threat. But he's been more versatile, I think, at all levels here.
Yep. And
he moves different, right? There are big plays to be created by Brian Thomas Jr. I believed in that part of his game. I didn't know that he'd be a 120, 130 target type of guy that's going to have 80 to 90 catches in a year. But he looks like he's capable of doing that. Same thing with Braylon Allen. Very good change of pace to Breece Hall. He was better than Breece Hall on Sunday against the Broncos. And, just moving a lot better, I think, than he did in college.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to complete. Again, it's really small sample size. To be completely changing your opinion on a guy at this point is tough, which is why I'm only really confident in those 2 being the positive side of this, because they've looked completely different than I expected them to. In terms of players that I would maybe move down relative to what I thought at draft time, It's hard because maybe Caleb Williams, right? Not because he's been terrible or because he looks awful or because he's going to be a bust, but because at the very minimum, it looks like he's not going to come in and just completely take the league by storm. Like we were talking, the idea that he could be the all-time leading single-season Bears quarterback after this season was not outside the realm of possibility heading into the year, right? I would say that's completely off the table right now, right? Now, part of that might be defenses are fighting back across the board, but like he's not going to do what CJ Stroud did last year. Like that part seems to be off the table. So at the very minimum, it's going to be a bit of a work in progress for Caleb Williams to become the player that he might be able to, as opposed to he's going to step in and like day one, we're going to see CJ Stroud or we're going to see Patrick Mahomes or that level of special. So maybe that got a bit out of control by the end of it.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a fair one. It's so early on this. I mean, yeah, we hear from JT as well. I mean, I like the way JT breaks down not just the quarterback, but the entire system. He's been breaking down Bears games a lot the last couple of years because a lot of people liked watching Justin Fields breakdowns for him. So we'll get to JT and Caleb in just a little bit. I think that's a fair one. Down for me, I hate doing this early, but Terrion Arnold, I mean, it's 4 games in at a volatile cornerback position, and the Lions are playing a lot of man coverage, so he's out there on an island quite a bit. He's been a little grabby, maybe some bad calls on Monday, but yeah. I loved his man coverage. I mean, there's a few players I watched during the draft last year where I was like, I need to text someone about, Jermaine Burton was one of those guys, and maybe he's in the down column because he's not actually catching passes.
He is, however, yeah. I mean, no.
He's getting open deep, but he's a wide receiver 4 right now on the depth chart. But Arnold was like, I needed to text you, be like, oh, he looks like the best man corner, and it's not even close. And so you just haven't seen all of that just yet from Arnold. I'm not out on him, just maybe lower at the moment maybe than I thought I would be.
Wide receiver is really hard because it's so opportunity driven and, situations. Like you keep talking, if he can do nothing else, it appears that Jermaine Burton can very much run deep and catch passes, right? Yeah. And he's being given like 3 or 4 snaps a game from the Bengals, during which he's open on almost all of them, and it's just whether or not they're going to throw one of those at him, right? So my other potential down is similar in terms of he's done nothing so far, right? But he's not being given any opportunity. Now, it's complicated because it's on the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton is maybe the worst coach in the NFL in terms of having random favorites and guys that he just doesn't want to give playing time to. So Denver Broncos, you got Courtland Sutton, good wide receiver. After that, they traded away everybody else. So their next highest receivers are Josh Reynolds, Little Jordan Humphrey. Like your guy Marvin Mims from a couple of years ago is buried on this depth chart. Nobody else is getting any kind of opportunity, right? So I would be like, given my expectations for Troy Franklin, I would have expected him to have cracked this lineup and be doing something, particularly given his college quarterback is Denver's quarterback. And instead, he's played 32 passing snaps and has... Did he
have an offensive pass interference the other day?
Maybe. He has 4 catches for 9 yards, right? Yeah. So he's basically doing nothing. On the other hand, most of those games, the quarterback has been terrible. And it's hard to know how much of that is Troy Franklin hasn't done anything and how much of that is Sean Payton likes weird players and those guys are sitting above him on the depth chart.
I mean, weird players like Taysom Hill who are absolute game changers for their respective offenses too.
But
we should have known. Like,
Little Jordan Humphrey is a classic. Like Sean Payton just likes that guy.
Once Franklin fell to the 4th round, though, and so many teams passed on him, we probably needed to reset expectations anyway. Even if you like him as a player, the opportunities just aren't going to be there as often as a 4th rounder. But yeah.
But this is a place where like the opportunity should be
Franklin's my other one, right? I mean, that's the other guy that we were pounding the table for that hasn't done much.
But it is a place, even in the 4th round, it's a place where if he was looking really good, you would think he'd be playing. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know. I hear you.
Like at least in Cincinnati, right? They already have, like they've got the 2 wide receivers that are really good, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and then Josivas, who they drafted a year ago, is potentially taking a step forward.
He's developed and been pretty good, yeah.
So it's like, it's hard to find clear playing time for Jermaine Burton, even if he was lighting it up in training camp or practice every single week. Whereas with Franklin, it's like, there's all kinds of playing time that should be available here. You've got Courtland Sutton and nobody else. Like, if he was looking good, it feels like we should find a way to put him on the field.
All right, so we got JT coming up at 11:30, so about 10 minutes away. Shouty Shows coming up as well. But first, you can meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. That's with our friends over at Factor. It's factormeals.com/SamandSteve50. And we've got a great promo code for it as well. Let me tell you about that in a second. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. So what are you waiting for? You got 35 different meals, more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. Always have new flavors to explore. Dietitian approved meals, ingredients that you can trust. You can make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with these easy, nutritious options. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. And keep kitchen time to a minimum. This is huge. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. For me, it's about 7 to 8 minutes. Don't have the microwave, but I throw it in the oven, and it is so easy to prepare because there's no shopping. There is no prepping. There's no cooking. There's no cleaning up. So head to factormeals.com/SamandSteve50. That's SamandSteve50. You get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. It's code SamandSteve50 at factormeals.com/SamandSteve50. And you get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active.
Bargain.
All right, man, you ready to do a little Shouty show? We're going to go from Shouty Shows to the dulcet tones of JT O'Sullivan, just, talking ball with us. So let's jump right to our first Shouty Show segment.
Oh, look at that picture.
It's a great pick. Love it.
This team is so badly prepared mentally and physically. The coach is a fool. He's always been a fool. He's always acted like a fool. His record is atrocious, and he can't win with a team that should win. And you know what? The way they're going nowhere, and he's going to lead the parade. And then the only thankful thing is it'll be right out the door. Overcoming this coaching staff is not easy. It might be too much for even Aaron Rodgers to do. See you later.
Legend,
Mike Francesca.
I knew he was talking about the Jets, obviously, before he mentioned Rodgers.
Is that a hallmark of his delivery? Usually, the slightly too long pauses between thoughts, just long enough for you to think there's something wrong with the broadcast.
I think that's part of the pacing.
Okay,
I think that's part of the pacing.
Yeah, that's like a standard cadence.
Because when you're in monologue mode, it just adds to the drama. Pausing adds a little bit of drama to it.
Right, but it's like there's a pause, and then there's a pause that's just long enough for you to think, has my stream gone down? Do I need to adjust the dial?
You got to sound really upset.
Yeah.
So he calls Robert Saleh a fool.
Always been a fool. Yeah.
Always been a fool.
Right.
The record's terrible. The thing I struggle. So I know someone like you might misconstrue the difference between, say, like a Boston and a New York accent.
No.
Mike has a lot of Boston in there too.
Yeah.
That you could think that's Boston sports radio.
Yeah. I mean, classic.
The Sox are ruining my summer type stuff.
Classic Shouty Show hyperbole, right? Like coaching, we have a problem here. Maybe what can we do about it?
It's always been bad. It's never been good.
Not just that. Let's call him a fool, and then let's say he's always been a fool. Like the whole thing is built off him being an idiot, right? I mean, evidently and obviously that's dumb.
I will say, the Jets, given the expectations, should be 3-1 right now.
Sure.
You would expect them to be 3-1. Lose to the Niners, beat the Titans, beat the Patriots, beat the Broncos. And when you lose 10-9 with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback,
they're 2-2
with those expectations,
with a last-second kick being the difference.
I know. And you know what, Mike? Aaron Rodgers has a history of bouncing back from disappointment, like a history of having he's had a lot of bad games he's had some really bad games through the years.
Sure.
And then he comes back and drops 4 touchdowns the next week. So I would just wait. I would just wait before the rant. I would say if they're 2-3 after week 5, if they go to London and lose to Minnesota, just save the rant a week. Then you could call Robert Saleh a fool.
Then he's a fool. He's always been a fool.
Always been a fool.
Perfect.
We always knew it. Look at his record.
All right, what's next?
What can you tell us right now? What statement are you willing to make right this moment about Jayden Daniels?
Jayden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC right now. I'm going to repeat again. Jayden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC right now.
Co-sign. I
Right now. Who's playing better than Jayden Daniels in the NFC right now? All that experience in college translates to the pros. This dude, nothing seems to bother him. He's accurate, he's athletic, he's cool in the pocket, and all that playing experience is playing out on the field right now.
This is top-notch work from Damien Woody. This is top-notch work. Here's why. He said right now.
Mm-hmm.
He said right now. This is beautiful. Stephen A. would never say right now. Skip wouldn't say right now. This is a cop-out because 5 weeks from now, if Jayden takes any step back and someone says, Damien, you said Jayden Daniels was the best quarterback in the NFC. He said, no. I said right now. Right? And who's to argue? Because right now, the Commanders have the best offense in the league. Jayden Daniels is completing 90% of his passes the last 2 weeks. He's right now. But you could also hear from Greeny, he's like, this was like the producers were like, all right, Damien, do you have any strong takes for this game? He goes, yeah, I'm gonna say Jayden Daniels. And Greeny's setting him up. He's like, do you have something to say? Do you have something big to say, Damien?
That's the problem, right? This is the thing, is that the Shouty Shows, what Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless have done to the world is it's now a systemic problem. It's not people like Emmanuel Acho just trying to replicate what they do. It's now a systemic cancer in the discussion, in the discourse, because Greenberg's out here leading him up the path going, what can you say right now? What's the hardest you can go?
Because he's got it in his notes. He's like,
comment.
in the 9 o'clock hour, Damien declares Jayden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC. All right, it's time for that. Let's go.
Because the producers have done it as well, right? They've gone, what's the most ridiculous thing you can say this week and back it up, right? And Greeny's now leading them up, going, come on. How hard can you push it, right? And that just leads Damien Woody, who I think is actually quite good generally and knows what he's talking about and is smart and is relatively measured, right? That leads him up this path to end up trying to beat Stephen A. Smith.
They've got like a shared Google Doc, like all right, the show notes for next. All right, Damien, give us a take on Jayden Daniels, and he types in best rookie quarterback I've ever seen, and then I could just hear a producer being like, "You got anything? Could you go a little further? Could you just take it a little bit further?" And he's like, "Fine, right. He's the best quarterback in the NFC right now."
Like that's a nice take, but can you
take it a little bit?
Can you
further?
give it more Stephen A?
See, I like that one because you can almost feel the segment coming together. I feel like I was in the production room putting that segment together with those guys.
You can feel the systemic problem with this. All right, what's the last one?
This organization was in a playoff game. And as we sit and talk right now, they're 1-3 with losses back-to-back weeks to the Giants and the Raiders.
Wow, we're getting high-pitched.
It still feels like they're trying to feel everything out on offense. There's more organization on the Las Vegas Strip at 3 a.m. on a Saturday than there is with this team in-game offensively. They can't score. They can't score. They have failed to reach 20 points in a game. 1-3, a lost season. I'm sad and I'm sickened. And now you think to yourself, what are the consequences about to be for this organization as this year goes on?
I don't know if there's an echo on that, but we apologize for the echo. Shouty Shows fighting back against us here. So that was about the Browns. I don't know, John. Do you know John?
I had no idea who that was until his name came on the screen and I Googled him. And I still don't really know who he is.
He sounds upset.
According to his bio on FoxSports.com, he's a national college basketball broadcaster and writer for Fox Sports.
That would explain his strong takes on the Cleveland Browns.
Right. And that's classic Shouty Show fodder as well, right? Like what we do here is we take a guy who can shout and get high-pitched when he gets excited about things, right, and go all squeaky, and then we apply him to a different sport he knows nothing about, right? This is Stephen A. Smith. This is right out of the playbook, right? What do you do with Stephen A? Well, everyone loves listening to Stephen A., so let's throw him on a UFC broadcast, and he can tell Joe Rogan what's up, right? Let's throw him on an NFL discussion panel where he can talk about players that have been retired for 3 years and are their big missing pieces for the Chargers this year. Like, this is classic Shouty Show MO.
All I'll have to say is I think the Browns kind of deserve it at this point. I can hear the frustration. I think all Browns fans have maybe not the same pitch in their voice as John, but they've got the same thought. This offense is rough, and it's pretty bad right now.
That's the first. That might
Even
be
when Deshaun Watson actually makes a few good throws, they're still not working.
Yeah, that might be the first Shouty show though we've had on where it's gone full squeak. You know, the excitement, the vitriol has really ratcheted up the pitch of the voice.
Well, I'll tell you who's not doing Shouty shows. It's JT O'Sullivan. Let's bring JT in here. The QB school. And making his return. His first time on Check the Mic, but his return with us. JT, how's it going, man?
What's up, guys? Congrats on the new look, the new vibe-ish over here. I like it.
Thank you, sir. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm fired up to talk about some Shouty shows.
Yeah.
That's our new segment that we don't get to hear them until we're live on the air. And they give us these, ridiculous takes from we call them the Shouty shows, right? The shows that we don't love. I don't tune into those shows. So we react to them live on the air.
That's probably the best way to handle that type of stuff. I'm not a huge fan myself, if you couldn't gather.
I was going to say, do you watch any of that stuff? Like, what do you have on in the TV in the background during your day-to-day?
I turn on the TV usually like while I'm eating lunch type of thing. Catch maybe some NFL Live, probably whatever's on ESPN. This is my time of year, actually, with the baseball playoffs. Catch a little day game maybe. This is like peak midday TV.
You're a Padres fan?
Come on now.
Yeah.
This is it, bro. This is the year. Lock in.
All right. Well, I'll root for the Padres. I have no rooting interest.
I was going to say, they're not one of the teams that
I did not play for the Padres.
You usually have a connection with some team.
I'm a former Giant, so I root for the Giants, and they're not here. So
I get it.
I'll root for the Padres.
It's hard when you've been in it, but but yeah, down here, San Diego, locked in. We finally got something that's exciting to watch, and it'll go in tonight. So hopefully, I'm not the issue.
Looking forward to watching some baseball playoffs, aren't you, Sam?
I've been to a Padres game.
Well, look at you, more than me.
Heck go.
There you go.
It's a good spot to go.
It is.
Let's talk QBs, as always. Your YouTube's growing, I see. Patreon's growing. Tell everybody where we can hear you first, and we'll talk a little bit Caleb Williams to kick it off.
Yeah. YouTube is the home. YouTube's like the hub of how this thing got going, but the Patreon thing has kind of taken off and become its own little entity, and so it's a lot of fun to get over there. And it's a little bit more deep divey. It's a little bit more like what it would be like in a position meeting type thing. It's a little bit looser with the language. A little bit less quarterback. It's actually I honestly think it's very much like a quarterback room, because there's a lot of complaining about wide receivers, pass protection, play calling, talk some defense, those types of things. That just is real life, what happens and how it all impacts the quarterback position, because they're the front of it and going to hear the brunt of the issues. So it's fun for me. I really just dive into the stuff that I'm interested in, and the young quarterbacks coming into the league this year are fun and exciting to see what these guys have got going here, like the quarter marker.
So, I want to talk Caleb Williams to kick things off. And when you do, even in your YouTube breakdowns, you're getting into the scheme. You're getting into what the receivers are doing, the attention to detail, what you think the play call is as much as you can and everything. So, high level, what are you seeing from the Bears? What are you seeing from Caleb Williams?
Well, I think, I'm probably as guilty as anybody of having really high expectations for this guy coming into the league, just to kind of, what I wanted is for him to do his thing. And I feel like that initial part of it, at least very early on, has maybe not flourished as much as I would love. Mm-hmm. It feels like when I'm watching the film that he is playing with kind of constraints on, and if that's what they're doing organizationally, that's their choice. I think when you couple that with maybe a perimeter that isn't quite as good as maybe people thought it was going to be, and then some issues in the pass protection with a different play caller, you can see some early struggles. I think you can also point to some steady progress and some, maybe not wow extend plays, but the capacity to deliver the ball, play on time, not bail from the pocket, those types of things that I think some people maybe thought, oh, he can't play on schedule, he can't play on time. That you can see the fingerprints of it. I just want to see him get the opportunity to flourish in his game. And for right now, it just feels like either that's not being promoted, he doesn't feel comfortable doing it, or all of the above.
I've been surprised by how bad that offensive line has looked this season. I thought that simply getting away from Justin Fields would actually make that group look a little bit better. The way he plays the game, they're just getting wrecked. How much of that do you think is on the personnel? How much of it is on the scheme? How much of it is on the way Caleb's playing the game right now?
Well, I would go even further back and say that those are ramifications of organizational decisions, right? Like you are where you put your money, those types of things that I get. But when you go out there with guys that are, and this is no like direct shot across the bow at these guys up front, especially the interior, you can't play quarterback consistently well when there is that much of a push, and just not even a push. It's like an immediate L. It's like a tidal wave across your face where you all of a sudden, you can't even get to your first read. You can't even get a hitch off. And the consistency there, I think it's actually been pretty admirable for how much Caleb has wanted to stay in the pocket. There are certain plays where it looks like he's like, fuck it, I'm not coming off this spot no matter what, where you're like, hey, just get out, create those types of things that I feel like for whatever reason has been difficult. But it has been frustrating. I probably wasn't as high on that group. And I know Justin took a hit for how long he held on to the ball. And there are certainly elements that certainly negatively impacted his play and his time in Chicago. But man, I just want to see, I feel like when I watch this offense, and it's an easy kind of hedge to say, oh, hey, you're making excuses for Caleb, but I don't necessarily love how they use some of the personnel. I don't think many of those guys on the perimeter look like they're very healthy. The personnel choices, like the groups of people that have been on the field, have been confusing. How they're using them has been confusing. And so you couple all that together and you get this kind of like middle of the road, ho hum, let's win with defense type of vibe here early on.
Yeah, I mean, going through Sunday's game in particular, I think when an offense, look, they won the game, but an offense, they're not moving the ball effectively. And I think to your point, my expectations were really high for Caleb, especially with the outside of structure stuff. I thought the natural playmaking would show up immediately. But like when you go through Sunday, it's like, what broke down on this play? This one, it was the offensive line. This one, it could be the scheme. This one, the receiver, I don't know if he's in the right place. But then you have plays like the turn down that you showed where Dunze's running behind the defense and he's just not taking that. Or he's got the red zone pass to DJ Moore. Maybe they're a little not on the same page. Some of the misses from Caleb feel like they're way off, or he's missing the deep shot. Like it's like one thing's breaking down every single play, I think, for this offense.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no excuse. The one that I think really stings for me was that turn down to Rome down the field. Yeah. Like that's
it's a 70-yarder.
Ones
it's a 70-yarder if he throws it.
You don't get those opportunities. I mean, those are big plays. You get one of those like once every 4 games type of that's a once a month shot in the league. I think of like Darnold hitting that a few weeks ago. Those are back-breaking shots, and to not even get there. So then I get really nervous because then I'm like, hey, are we not identifying this pre-snap? Because we're turning the back, we're playing under center. That part of it, you have to know pre-snap. All right, split field coverage. I'm going to look at that safety. If that safety hesitates at all, this post is going over the top. That's the whole reason we're calling the play. Are we looking the other way? And how we got down to the check down. I know people are like, oh, he's getting through his reads. He's getting through that's fine when there aren't things there. But when there are things there and they're that big and they're that hookup, and it feels like they're being really intentional with trying to create that connection between those two guys, that those ones they really sting, man. You got to learn from that and have it never show up on the film again.
Meanwhile, you've got Jayden Daniels playing out of his mind in the first few weeks, where he's setting NFL records for completion rate. He's looking incredibly good. He's learning how to slide. He's not launching himself, shoulder first into every hit as well. How impressed have you been by Jayden Daniels so far?
I mean, I don't know if you can overstate it, to be honest with you. I mean, it really has been that impressive. I know it's kind of it's one of those things, again, where we're so early, and I'm guilty of this as anybody, because you're in it every day, but we're so early. But when you look at the completions and just the completion percent, and I'm one of those guys that I actually like to kind of throw shade at people when they're like, look at the completions, they're all perimeter screens or, RPO type centric stuff. There's certainly a part of that. There's also a part of what I really like from what Jayden's doing is he looks like he understands what the offense is trying to do. There are a number of times where the first read is designed to open. And so for me, that's a real testament to Cliff and company over there, because third medium, the number one read, open. Third medium, number one read, open. And not just open, but like pretty wide open for league standards, to be able to get those completions, to feel good, to be able to then we're going to use the quarterback run game, open that part of the game up. And so now nobody knows where the hell he's going to be. And all those things combined with his poise, with his he just looks like he belongs, and he has a deep understanding of exactly what they're doing. And then you throw on the top of it how accurate he's been with the ball, and he's off to a great start.
It also feels like when things aren't there, that's when he's using his legs. I mean, to me, his completion. I was at the game against the Bengals, and I was like, man, the Bengals pass rush was terrible, but you could see the comfort in Daniels in the pocket, and it's like if it's not there, he's not forcing it. He's just going to go pick up 5. And so I feel like the completion percentage is high too because he's scrambling at the right time, and all he's doing is staying on schedule. And I don't know, the combination of when he runs, I think, is just outstanding right now, decision-wise.
Yeah, he definitely feels like he's got a great feel for the game when it comes to that, whether it be the pocket movement stuff. I think if you're going to I think the one part that kind of jumps off the film for maybe a few missed opportunities for Jayden has been, and again, I'm hedge this thing, like, because I'm not like air raid certified, and I know Cliff is like an air raidy guy. He's got some air raid bones to him, but every once in a while, it feels like he will drift a little bit and kind of try to. And I know Jayden knows. I've sat down and had deep conversations with him about footwork and timing and rhythm. He was locked in at LSU about what they were asking him to do. There's no recess to his drops. And so when I see him take deep drops or 5 or 7-step gun drops, to me, those things are like, hey, is that just the way this offense is made, where he thinks if he's got to buy time, he can do that? Those types of things make me a little nervous. But when he's on time, on schedule, it's not there, take off, use your legs. And then you combine that with the actual quarterback run game and when they're running him and how they're running him, I really like it. And then the other thing with Cliff and the way this offense is constructed I was just interested to see what Cliff would be like coming back into the league and how to use what I consider like wide edges or heavy personnels. And they seem to do a really good job of mixing that up and making life easier for him with wider edges.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. With the caveat that you haven't done your air raid coaching badges, what have you noticed about this new version of Kingsbury's offense versus where it was when he left the league? Because it sort of felt like, it had almost run its course in Arizona. People were souring on it, and now he's had time away from the game. And so far, the offense is cooking. How different is it?
Well, I think you see the best and the shadow of it, to be honest with you, a little bit, because you can see him what I consider like more NFL modern offense, where you're designing guys open, where you're trying to be like, all right, the winner is going to be here. The number 1 read is there. If it's not there, the same alley, the same lane is going to be the number 2 guy. If that's not there, Jayden, use your legs, go get us some positive yardage. Well, the first guy is there early on in the game. So you can tell that the offensive architecture, the structure, the design is pretty outstanding. I think the one that kind of jumps to my mind, I think there were 2 plays in the last game. One, the interception. It looked like Jayden took what I would consider normally a 3 and a hitch type of play action throw, where I think he took 5, and it was just a tick late. Normally you see those seams or posts thrown with the middle field open at like 20-ish yards. This was at 30 yards. Now the guy made a hell of an interception, one-handed, those types of things, but it felt late. And those are the types of things with, when I think air raid, I think like feel and grass and those types of things, which are really hard to do in the league because everything is so precise. All the space is condensed. And then the other one, I think, was the one that they got away with. I think the corner kind of had a penalty late. He threw a big post over the top. I think he took like a 7-step gun drop, which to me, the only person who does that really ever is Patrick Mahomes. Now, it was impressive that he had the arm strength to let it rip, but it's one of those things where you're really putting those guys on the edge in a tough spot as far as a tackle to do that consistently. Now, if you're doing it just because you feel it and you got to buy time, that's one thing. The other thing I forgot to mention, and I forget the guy's name right now, but man, watching that Commanders film, the right guard for the Commanders, he's like
Cosme
surging up my favorite offensive line offensive lineman in the league. He's a blast to watch. They've got some great pass pro going on.
I wanted to ask you about the footwork stuff and the deeper drops. I had somebody ask me on Twitter if that's a reason why Daniels isn't feeling the pressure that, say, Caleb Williams does. But what you mentioned is right. Like normally if you drop to 10+ yards, which Mahomes did a lot early in his career, the pressure that you're putting on the edge is the angles that they're trying to block for. But is there something to that? Like, are they making it work, the deeper drops for Daniels? Are they making it work? Are they blocking differently to kind of give him that room in the pocket to operate? Or what are like the pros and cons of the deeper drop, right? Like, is there something working for Washington that doesn't work for others maybe?
The answer for me would be no. Those guys, especially on the edge, they know exactly where the hell you're supposed to be. You have to be on your landmark when you're supposed to be there. There's no recessy vibe, I think, in the NFL. And again, this is where the part where I'm coming in with what I think of when I think of Cliff a half decade ago, where there was more air raidiness to the drop, where the timing of it isn't quite as precise as you would see with a lot of quote unquote like West Coast or digit guys who, you know exactly where you're supposed to be, the footwork you can't deviate from. I think there's a lot more what I'm used to calling like combo drops, where you're kind of like letting it open up as you get depth. Those types of things are really tough on an offensive tackle. I'm not sure you can live in that world in the NFL, because those edge guys are so dynamic, and you talked about it. You're just giving them a straight shot when they can pin their ears back.
The sample size thing this early in the season is always difficult, because, we talk about it with rookies. How much did you come off your priors based off those guys in a few games, but also with veteran quarterbacks as well. And I think the most obvious example this season is Sam Darnold, where we've seen Sam Darnold for a lot of time now in the NFL. Most of it has not looked like this. So is this real, or is this a sample size issue that we're dealing with here? And at some point, Sam Darnold is going to turn back into a pumpkin.
Well, man, I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it might be a little bit more tilting towards real in this situation. And again, this is a great testament to organization, to players that are around you, to play caller. When you've got what I would consider probably one of the best players in the league as your wide receiver, it changes everything. There's a whole different level of open for you. You couple that with how Kevin is calling those plays and how they're designing and moving him around, it feels like, and there's a lot of space for Sam to operate. I also think for the most part, he's playing at a very high level. The dude can spin it. He's always been able to spin it, but he looks comfortable. He looks decisive. It looks like the way that I was interested to watch him this year is, it looks like he's taken a little bit of Purdy and overlaid it to his game as far as the decisiveness. And I feel like Sam has taken a few times when it hasn't been there, and he's used his legs to get first downs, to get easy first downs, to stay on schedule. Now, I feel like you have to couple that by saying, if you watch the film, he absolutely got lucky a few times. And that thing is going to flip over at some point, and those things are going to turn into more consistent turnovers. And so that part of it, you're just living on the edge right now with Sam until he's able to play those kind of clean back-to-back weeks.
Kevin O'Connell came out saying organizations fail young quarterbacks more so than the other way around, young quarterbacks failing the organization. I hear you talk about structure and play caller and personnel a lot. How do you feel about that? Is it the organization failing young quarterbacks more often than not?
I mean, it's probably even more variables than that. I wouldn't even say it's just the organization. That feels like such a blanket type statement. But yeah, the development, the opportunity, the players that you're playing around. I always think of it as, hey, congratulations, you're the best player. You're going to the worst team.
Yeah.
It's just a bizarrely un-American thing that I know American sports fans are used to. They're used to the draft, but you say draft and anything else, and people will freak the hell out, as they should. But in sports, it's like, yeah, you're the best. Go to the worst, and you're like, wait, what?
Go save them.
Like like what? Say what?
Literal socialist principles, and we just accept it in the most capitalist thing in America.
It's just bizarre to me, and I get in trouble sometimes because I'll say that it's very un-American, but to me it really is, and there are other ways to do it. It will never change probably, but the idea being that you get picked high because you're great, and the team that you're going to is probably not great, and so you see the flip side of that. For me, playing out in Carolina to a certain degree, you go into a situation where the weapons are depleted, the organization is in flux, as opposed to you go to Minnesota right now, and it seems like Kevin has really come into his own as far as calling plays. It seems like Justin Jefferson is that dynamic. I mean, it's pretty crazy when you turn on the film and you can manipulate Justin Jefferson's route splits, movements, to have nobody in the screen when he catches the ball. And that's not like some crazy made up play. That's like mesh railroad, like the most simple mesh concept you can run. And they're creating that much space for him. So it's great for Sam. I'm excited to see what it looks like. I think he can really spin it. And, it's one of those things where I just want to see him keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Darnold's definitely looked really comfortable in that offense. I think some of the red zone stuff's been really impressive to me. The red zone accuracy. I know he had the high red zone interception. He had another high red zone interception to Fred Warner a couple weeks ago. But the tight, like inside the 5, red zone decision making and accuracy, I think they're just KOC's play calling, Darnold's accuracy and decision making, I think, has been fantastic once they get
and
close.
they're getting guys back. Addison back, Hawkinson on the way. Like the reinforcements coming as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Kevin that I think has been so interesting is I don't know him that well, but I don't know if he called plays before he got there. So for this to be like the first time out the gate, and to be, I think it's actually sometimes hard to call plays when you've got such a dynamic kind of gravitational force, because you have to be intentional about moving him around. And it's fun to watch their film and just see all the different places he lines up and moves, and how they use Justin Jefferson and really do create opportunities for him to get the ball, because when he's one-on-one, he's getting the ball. The whole stadium should know that he's getting the ball, but they move him around and use him in different ways that's so creative and fun to see.
Have you gotten to watch Trevor Lawrence from this week, or have you been able to watch him closely this year?
Yeah, and it's funny. There's actually, I think there's a little bit of a parallel between how Sam and Trevor are playing. Like, I think when I think of how Sam is playing the position, to me, he just looks so mechanically sound. Like his base, the way he's able to throw and torque his back foot in the ground with that back hip, and you can just tell he's polished up. Where when I turn on the Trevor Lawrence film, and there's a lot of things in Jacksonville, I get it, but man, Trevor Lawrence looks like he is playing backwards. He's all over the place with his feet. He's constantly moving, fall. I've always thought he's been a guy who is a bit of a leaner to the left, meaning he can't, he's so big. Sometimes his film looks a little bit different than everybody else's with his wide base. But man, you turn on the film and he's moving backwards. His feet are all over the place. He's completely inconsistent with his ball location. I always think that it starts from the ground up. And with Trevor, it's a perfect example. If you turn on that last game, there are throws that he is skymailing, and his feet don't give him a chance to be successful.
How much, because I always thought in college that he would speed up, like he would rush things that he didn't need to. And I feel like I'm seeing things in his decision making where he's almost like just choosing the more difficult option. And he has those games where he hits it, like he hits like this 20-yard deep out between coverage. And if he hits 3 or 4 of them in a game, it's like, wow, that's impressive, Trevor. But I just don't know if he's taking the easy stuff when it's there. And there's something missing in the decision making for me with Lawrence. Are you seeing anything similar?
I mean,
or how would you describe it?
I wouldn't necessarily phrase it like that. I think I'll put it this way. If he hits a couple deep shots down the field, which I wouldn't call them layups, but I would call them easier deep throws.
Yeah.
We're not talking about this. They're 1-3. They have a nice win against the Texans. And they got gifted some field position in that game. But the throw where he misses, I think it was Kirk on the little waggle to the left and big post back the other way.
Yep.
That wasn't close.
Missed it by a mile.
And those are the type of throws where you're just like, bro, those will get a whole team looking at you sideways. And so it's one of those things where you just can't miss those throws consistently. And that wasn't the only one. I think he missed another one on the left side where it's just like, man, we've got to be able to take those opportunities. And then your point about being sped up, I would push back a little bit with what they're doing scheme-wise and saying, if you're looking across the landscape of the league on what I would consider most modern high-level offenses, they look dated. And when I'm saying that, I mean static formations, the same splits all the time. When I think of Doug, doing his thing back in the day, I think of him being like on the forefront of the RPO world.
Yeah.
Where now I think of they're like, hey man, we got to have something more creative with what we're doing to be able to pop some guys open for Trevor. But then they're popping guys down the field. We're just not hitting them. So it's both of those things. And now all of a sudden we're sitting 0-4.
That's the fascinating thing about this system, this offense to me, is like there was a run a few years ago where this offense was the offense that was like at the forefront, right? All these guys with when RPOs first became like a really big part of NFL offenses. Yeah, the Chiefs obviously doing their thing. Peterson, his system went to Philadelphia, was amazing. Matt Nagy gets the job in Chicago based off what he was doing in Kansas City. And then it was like as soon as the league figured out how to start defending RPOs, and then things shift in a different direction, this offense just got left behind. And Peterson's almost like, obviously Andy Reid is still Andy Reid and is still amazing, but Peterson's is the one that's kind of stagnated.
It definitely feels different, or it feels more dated than when you look at most other people with how much movement, how they're using different splits, how they're, just creating leverage to get easy completions. And so when you talk about, it looks like he's quick, he's playing fast, he's not in the tempo and the rhythm of the offense. To me, that is tethered to the play calling, the design to have that first read open, kind of like the opposite of Jayden Daniels, where you turn on Jayden Daniels film and the first 3 or 4 third downs are wide open throws. That's not happening for Jacksonville. And then when you see the design shot opportunities that are really well designed and called, then we're missing them. And so we're missing both sides of it. And now all of a sudden it does feel like kind of a dumpster fire when you look at the overall performance of the unit.
JT, we only gave you those 4 to really deep dive into, but early in the season, can you even remember everything that you watch, or is it like a blur when you're done?
No.
Is there anything that stands? So I remember when Zach Robinson used to grade all the quarterbacks. I'd be like, "Who stood out this week?" He goes, "I just watched every throw from the NFL. I have no idea what I just watched." Anyone else that stood out positively or negatively, or any other general early season things that you've seen that have stood out schematically or teams or anything, and just throwing you on the spot here?
I mean, I think originally, just like the rest of the league, I was fascinated to see what Green Bay was doing with Malik Willis, just as far as the story and as far as just like pulling for him, as far as like going there, playing against your own team. I thought it was really amazing what LaFleur and company were able to do to kind of play to his strengths. That's the part that always feels weird to me in the league, is you get these quarterbacks, you draft them, you bring them in the building, you develop them or you don't develop them, and you don't allow them to play to their strengths. And that's kind of where I'm a little frustrated with Chicago, if I'm being honest, where I just want them to lean into the strengths of what Caleb does. And I think, as far as someone who's also just interested in watching high level football, I think it's fun to go back and it's interesting for me to go watch like what Denver's trying to do and what it looked like. And I know that last game was a bit of a weather game, but it's just one of those things where Bo Nix has a certain set of strengths that you are obviously all in, leaning in on, and how you're going to make that look like and fit it into an NFL offense, to me, is fascinating.
Well, JT, we appreciate it, man. Always enjoy having you on the show. Love listening to your stuff. Again, tell everybody where they can find you.
Appreciate the offer. The home is YouTube for sure, and then everything kind of springs from there. So if you're interested, get over there and then hop over to the Patreon community if you can't get enough of me.
Well, let me know when you get into all the college quarterbacks. There's about 25 intriguing names, and I don't know where they end up landing. But
the Shedeur Sanders and I was actually really high on Quinn Ewers.
Yeah,
and I think he hasn't played the last few weeks, but I thought he looked pretty good early on, so we'll see.
Yeah, I thought Ewers just immediately looked like he'd improved, this year versus previous years. Continues to get better. So we'll have to have you back on around draft time, though, breaking down the QBs.
For sure. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, JT.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, man. All right, everybody go check out QB School. Love listening to JT.
Which is your slumped side? Is big people having generally you have a
my right side, my throwing.
Okay, I was just he was talking about a big guy in Trevor Lawrence. He leans to the left. I'm wondering if that was just a big guy thing.
He's as a tall pitcher. So as a thrower, you're fighting to keep your front side closed, right? So if you have a pitching coach, he's always like, keep your shoulder closed, right? Because your front side you want to keep closed as long as possible.
Yeah.
So what he's describing is Trevor's balance being back. He's leaning back and his front side's opening too much, and that makes your arm drag and you lose your.
But it's not just large people lean to the left.
No, it's not large people lean to the left. It's large people have longer limbs that are tougher to control. That's what it is.
That makes sense.
The further your limbs get away from your center of gravity, the harder it is to keep everything compact and everything. So that's why you have a guy like Randy Johnson wasn't until he was like 27 or 28 until he actually had some control. It just takes us longer.
And then he's blasting pigeons out of the sky.
Before you know, you're smashing pigeons with the ball. And that's what happens.
Nice.
Again, thanks to JT. Go check out the QB School, YouTube, and Patreon.
I love JT because he might be the only person out there that's more nuanced and on the fence than we are.
That's true. Yeah.
No matter what you ask him, he's always like, "Well, I wouldn't characterize it that way. I'd find a more nuanced way of doing it."
I try not to use the word take with him. Because you're not going to get a take.
Yeah, you're just going to get his analysis and his read on it.
Yeah, but again, I like the way he breaks down the videos because he's looking at it holistically. It's not like this quarterback's good, this quarterback's bad. It's like, here's all the things on this play that went right and wrong, and it's not just the QB, obviously. Mm-hmm. Check the Mic, sponsored by BetterHelp and brought to you by BetterHelp. October's the season for wearing masks and costumes, But some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to at work, social settings, around our family, and BetterHelp is here to help. So it's a way to get therapy and to get help online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. And so it's a great way to do things on your own terms. So take off the mask with BetterHelp. You can visit betterhelp.com/checkthemic today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/checkthemic. So betterhelp.com/checkthemic. You get 10% off your first month.
Yeah, I mean, BetterHelp, I think, are changing the entire landscape in a positive way, right? There's a lot of stigma around mental health that shouldn't be there. And I think the more roadblocks you put in front of people and between them and getting the help they need, the more difficult and the worse it is. And being able to do the whole thing online without having to go drive somewhere, sit in a waiting room, all those kinds of things, huge and a really encouraging step in the right direction. So check them out. Absolutely.
Yeah, 10% off your first month, betterhelp.com/checkthemic. All right, we got a little mailbag segment here, and then we have mailbag and my prize picks, my lineup.
The lineup.
Mailbag question. Do you want to read the mailbags?
Yeah.
Mailbag questions here?
Let me just increase the size of this image so that I can read it with my eyes. This one is from Richie. Hey, Sam and Steve, longtime listener of the show, and even longer time suffering Browns fan. The sad Deshaun Watson story gets all the media headlines, but I have another angle to share and ask a question. The lauded Browns analytics department recently rated number 1 in the league by ESPN. That's a fascinating article, by the way. It's always worth checking out.
Seth Walder.
Oh, is it Seth Walder's, right. Is mostly led by the chief strategy officer, Paul DePodesta, the guy from Moneyball. For multiple years, DePodesta's department has been pushing for more vertical passing concepts, since the numbers were showing higher value creation for those types of offenses. This, along with Watson's failure, ultimately led to the firing of Alex Van Pelt last offseason, which frustrated many people on the Brown staff. Now, with NFL defenses shutting down vertical routes, the McVay-like run-heavy scheme of Alex Van Pelt coming more in vogue, this looks like a really poor decision. My question is, analytics departments serve a great purpose in identifying trends for offenses and defenses to exploit, but do those departments consider forecasts of where the league is heading before making decisions? Is it possible to predict the schemes that will be successful in future years? Thank you, from Rich.
I think this is a fantastic question.
Yeah.
And I don't have a great answer to it.
You don't?
I don't. So I don't have any personal experience talking with people and being like, hey, it's easy to, because what he's saying, it's easy to find the things to do.
Right.
And if you rewind 3 or 4 years, 5 years, we were saying, hey, run more play action, run more motion. These things feel like cheat codes that teams aren't using enough of, and now they're doing it. Right. So I think a lot of analytics departments have had influence in changing the league. Of course, going for it fourth down is the most obvious one. I don't know if they're good at anticipating. I don't know if they're good at saying, well, the league is going to use more play action, or they're going to do this or that. I would say that the one thing I would say, though, on the play action piece is your nerds would have said, stop worrying about the run so much, you're getting gashed by play action. And there's ways of tracking this historically that you can see that linebackers aren't biting up on play action as much maybe as they used to. And there's certain teams that just slow play it, or play pass first and then react to the run. So that's one of those things where I do feel like it's a little bit more reactive. But to the point in the question here, it's a fantastic one, right? Because on paper, yeah, throwing the ball deep more often is better. This was the old Baylor scheme in college. They would just run verts all the time, and it's like my completion percentage might be 1 for 3, but if I hit one of those 40-yarders,
right,
we hit one, right? So like on paper, it might work more, but I don't know if analytics people around the league have anticipated, oh shoot, the defenses are going to start taking those away. Now we need to dink and dunk more and build our team in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is that the analytics don't do any of that stuff, right? It's all about the interpretation. And this is always the problem with all of this stuff, is that there are, even just within the NFL, right? There's 32 NFL teams, and there's 32, we always described it as 32 different levels of competency when it comes to data and information and all that kind of stuff, right? I would say there's also 32 levels of how, like, interpretation of all that data, right? And that's really the key to all of this, is you have all this information. Now it's up to somebody to interpret that and figure out exactly what you want to do with it and how you want to use it. So the Browns, I think, do use data to predict certain things, like the Amari Cooper potential trade that we talked about earlier. They got out in front of this and reworked Amari Cooper's deal that at the time I think was seen in one way, and now, Brad Spielberger, formerly of PFF, now of an agency, I forget who he's working for, he was essentially tweeting that we should probably start seeing these in a different light. Like Cleveland has effectively reworked his contract so that he's much more tradable, which in turn will yield a better draft pick when they trade him, right? So Brad is saying that essentially you should view deals like that as the Browns are trying to buy a better draft pick by reworking his contract, right? It's a proactive step to anticipate a move that's going to come down the line and get yourself a better draft return than you would get if you just simply waited and then tried to shift them later in the season. So I think the analytics and data and, the nerds, they can anticipate certain things, but what it's essentially saying is that nobody anticipated this within that building. But that's not to say nobody did league-wide. We've been asking the question, did Buffalo see this coming with their offense the way they've constructed it, or did they just luck into it, right? Kansas, this is not something that showed up week one.
Right.
Teams have been shifting towards more too high since Tyreek Hill was destroying everybody early in his Chiefs career, right? How do you take away Tyreek Hill, those vertical shot plays? Well, let's start playing more too high. Let's start taking away those verticals. Russell Wilson, a big part of his decline, I think, is the shift away from the types of defenses that Russell Wilson was annihilating with deep balls to ones where those deep balls are not available as often. So the league has been shifting in this direction for a while. Evidently, the Browns don't appear to have anticipated it, but that's not to say other teams didn't.
I'd also say it's not just the analytics department. It's the general managers.
It's the whole organization,
job, right? Like they're all, and a lot of it is just intuition, right? Like a lot of them, they watch a lot of football, and it's like, oh, things are trending this way. One of the things you could anticipate was maybe the value of defensive tackles going up.
Right.
If you're playing more too high and there's a little bit more pressure on those guys. Again, I'm still of the mind that the market's moved more by the players than the scheme, but I could have been wrong on that teams are saying, hey, these guys have to be more valuable because we're only playing with a six-man box now. We have to stop the run better with fewer players.
I will say...
I've made that statement since early last decade that was an important thing.
The implication in this question is that the nerds as a concept are quite good at identifying areas of opportunity, should we call them?
Yeah, that's a good way.
But not particularly good at anticipating unintended consequences.
Everyone else will also attack this area of opportunity. Therefore, what's the next thing? How do you stay a step ahead?
Even if it's not a what's the counter off the thing, if we push this margin, what happens, right? It's simply so what happens in terms of a reaction, right? If this is a cheat code and we start using the cheat code, how does the league react to that cheat code, and what is the next step that we have to be anticipating? I think they fall down even before that sometimes, where it's like, okay, if this is a cheat code and we push this button a lot, what happens, right? Like, what is the other consequences of simply hammering this button a lot? If we have one, literally if it's a game and we have a controller and this button we've discovered is actually a really good way of doing whatever, if we just start hammering this button all the time, what else happens, right? I don't think they're generally that great at gaming, war gaming it all out and seeing all the different avenues, right? And that's kind of the implication of this, right? Is that we ran all the numbers, we identified this area of opportunity, deep passing. We should be doing more of that. It's way more valuable. Let's do lots of that. Okay, but if you just hammer the deep passing button on the controller all the time, what happens? Should we start thinking about other intended consequence or unintended consequences to that strategy? And I do think that is a potential weakness in some analytics.
The second question is fantastic. We have a grading system for the show here.
Yeah.
Which I'm a little nervous about because I'm not good at some of these things.
Sure. Listener Mike, now that we have left PFF, we need a new grading system, right? We can't, it's intellectual property. We can't take that with us.
Can't take it with us.
Somebody else's. So, hey, Steve and Sam, inspired by PFF's legendary grading system, I thought it was high time I brought some analytical rigor to the podcasting world. And I'm introducing my very own grading system, Check the Grade, where I grade every NFL podcaster, every host, every word, and every prediction you guys make.
Oh, no.
let's break it down. Check the grade scoring system. Hitting a 4-pick prize pick selection plus 2 points.
Woo! Okay, I got that. Good start here.
Shameless plug to the official sponsor, the presenting sponsor, indeed, of this show. So you're plus 2. You're in the green.
My lineup was outstanding last week, so I already have plus 2 points because of that.
When you nail those prize picks like champs, it's a slam dunk. Keep those winning picks coming, he says. Flubbing a word or a team name is minus 0.5 points. Now, you said the last show you did that 7 times?
I had
something
5
like
to
that?
7 on last Monday show, I think.
So you've gone from plus 2 to like minus 2.5.
Back in the negative,
Yeah.
if we were scoring at home, yeah.
Oops, whether it's mixing up the Steelers or the Chargers because Carson Steele isn't on the Steelers or any other verbal hiccup, we've all been there. Declaring the stupid Eagles are fixed and getting blown out is negative 1 point.
Mike's an Eagles fan. He's upset that I said that the Eagles were fixed right before they got blown out, so I get a minus 1. See, these are all mine. These are all my grades here.
Did we not know that the Eagles were cursed this week from the curse wheel? We linked to That's Good Sports on YouTube, who does some really good stuff. He had apparently pre-cursed the Eagles, so you should have known that. That's on you.
Got to do more research.
So again, now you're even further in the hole. Not knowing, this one's on me now, not knowing when to buy in on Baker and always getting it wrong is half a point against me. You can't get digged too much on the Baker coaster. So yeah, it does feel like I'm going to be lurching consistently, zigging whilst Baker zags and always being on the opposite side of this.
Another good one for you here.
Yeah. Sam's crazy but genius analogies, e.g. the exploding whale, is plus 1.5 points. When Sam dives into those wild analogies that start off crazy but make perfect sense, it's pure gold. The exploding whale is still a favorite. For anyone that is new or just new enough that the exploding whale doesn't mean anything to you, years ago when we were predicting a game at some point in a preview show, I suggested that was it the Falcons or the Saints? The Falcons, right?
It was the
Playing
Falcons
the Saints.
upset the Saints.
I suggested that the Falcons were going to upset the Saints because despite being terrible that season, the Falcons were like an exploding whale, i.e. a giant decomposing Leviathan waiting on the beach for one last explosion. And that was the explosion to beat the Saints. I think it came true, right?
To the point where there's a minor league team called the Exploding Whales, and I think they listened to the show, and they sent us.
I can't get it right now because I'm attached to this
stuck.
thing, but my
With the
exploding
hats
whale
over there. I mean, it's a whole bit.
Yeah.
So
Here, you talk for 3 seconds, I'll get my hat.
Somewhere around mid-season. And so after that point, we'd had like an Exploding Whale game, right? So, if the Eagles are 2-7 at some point, they could be an Exploding Whale ready to come back. So at some point mid-season, we'll have Exploding Whale options to choose from potentially for an Exploding Whale game.
All right, I'm back.
But we do have the hat.
I'm back and I got my hat.
You don't need to be plugged in
the Eugene
anymore.
Emeralds. No, it's true. The Eugene Emeralds are the actual team, but they rebrand for periods as the Eugene Exploding Whales, and they sent us an Exploding Whales merch hat. No, they didn't. We had a listener did that, right? Somebody sent us a
and
hat.
then we
Anyway.
talked to the team about going up there throwing the first pitch,
Right.
but like
that hadn't happened yet.
we might need 33rd to pay for us to go up there next year.
Point
and throw
being-
the first pitch before a game.
Point being, there's an Exploding Whales hat out here because of this analogy that I've become known
It's
for.
a plus 1.5.
It is.
when you make another one like that.
Where are we now? Okay, nailing an ad read, terms and conditions, sounding like you're at 2 times speed is plus 1. So you do that every now and again. Your strike rate isn't great at it, but you've hit some.
Usually under pressure. Usually when there's a guest waiting, whatever it might be. But yeah, it's a good option.
Says it's always impressive. Maybe it should be worth more, but it is only a disclaimer, terms and conditions. This one's up for debate, he says. Looking forward to our advice on refining this grading system, and maybe even with a subscription, I'll let you see your own scores. Oh, how the tables have turned. I'm getting J.J. Watt and Bobby Massey to help make sure he's completely unbiased. Just kidding. Who's got time for that? He loves the way we bring our unique perspectives and entertaining tangents to the podcast. Keep up the fantastic work. And he has a real question. When is the Exploding Whale season? Is it after the trade deadline, Thanksgiving, or earlier? And who would be the top candidates this year?
It's certainly between the trade deadline and Thanksgiving, I would say.
Well, we're certainly too early for the Exploding Whale season at the moment because the big the defining characteristic is it has to be a team that was once, a majestic, dominant creature of the sea, but is now dead lying on the beach, right? Now, we're too early to basically declare any team dead. So the Bengals, for example, right?
The Bengals could be a team.
Bengals right now are 1-3, but they're not dead, right? I've seen a prediction playoff model that has them at 25% to make the playoffs. They were 1-3 last year. The Bengals go on a run, they could be right back in it. However, they could equally, lose a couple of games.
They're
and
sitting
suddenly,
there at 3-7 or something.
Yeah, and suddenly it's like, no, the Bengals are dead. But they absolutely have a game like that in them to just randomly show up one day and knock off, the Ravens or whatever.
Bengals look like the most obvious one if they just lose a couple more games.
Right. So the Bengals would be the obvious candidate. Miami could be another one, but theirs is a quarterback problem, so that's sort of more
The Rams count?
permanent. The Rams possibly. But yeah, I think Cincinnati is the most obvious potential exploding whale on the horizon.
Great email, though, and always enjoy those. Check the mic at the33rdteam.com. We'll be checking those emails every single week and, going through some of the better ones here on the Wednesday show. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to my prize picks lineup. We've heard plenty about – last week was our first week in our sponsorship, our partnership with Prize Picks. It was the first time we set lineups, and my lineup did pretty well.
Well, it did perfectly, in fact.
Did perfectly. We did 10 exits. So you guys can play along with us. Prize Picks app. Use the code Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. So I'm going to do my lineup today. We'll talk about it, and then tomorrow you'll do your lineup, and you guys can play along with us. So I'm going to start with, in my lineup, a lot of research here. T. Higgins, Cincinnati Bengals.
Yep.
More receiving yards than 57.5 for T. Higgins. They're going up against the Ravens.
Yeah.
And Jamar Chase. So Jamar Chase has gone off the last couple of weeks. Here's my reasoning. Remember, we used to have this Jamar Chase theory. The teams that don't see him as often seem to not realize how fast he is, and they can't tackle him. It kind of got rebirthed the last couple of weeks. 2 NFC teams. Jamar Chase goes crazy. The Ravens, though, they know what they're getting in Jamar Chase. They're going to give him all the attention.
Right.
T. Higgins, 57.5. We're going more than that. I think he's got a big game in store for him.
Okay. I mean, Ravens are not a team I would be looking to exploit in terms of passing yards.
I also think the Bengals need to throw the ball a lot. I think they're going to need to score a lot of points in this game. So that's the reasoning behind T. Higgins. The second one is more based off film. I'm going Rome Odunze. And after watching the Bears,
missed shot,
a couple of them. After watching Rome Odunze and the Bears and the missed opportunities there, more than 36.5, felt like we just had to play that.
Well, one of those you hit.
Yes, Caleb would have doubled this with if he just hit the bomb.
Right.
So it feels like one of the. It's not completely squeaky wheel, but it's one of those. Hey, we missed these opportunities. Let's make sure we hit them this week. And we're going up against the Carolina Panthers, their lack of a pass rush. So more than 36.5 for Rome Odunze. I think the Bears are going to make sure they get him the ball. And then I'm going Sam Darnold. Less than his passing number. I'm sorry. Look, he's been less than 210 in 50% of his games this year, 2 out of 4. And you're going up against the Jets defense in London, Jets pass defense.
In London.
Right, that has high-end potential. They held Bo Nix to -7 in the first half last week. So 231.5, I'm going to say less than that for Sam Darnold this week. This isn't being a Darnold hater. I might even pick Minnesota to win.
A little bit like
this is just saying, passing yard wise, maybe they'll run the ball. They'll run the ball effectively and not need Sam Darnold against this good Jets pass defense.
Now, what is your interpretation of the effects of London on this game? So we've got a totally different time zone, totally different country, totally different field.
You're in the British Isles.
Correct. And is this Spurs Stadium or Wembley?
I don't know. I should have factored that in.
That's what I'm saying.
If it's the Spurs, maybe I should go more. It's a better surface for passing, right?
I think. Do they use a hybrid?
Are they
surface?
in the field turf?
Spurs. I don't
are
think
they
it's
indoors? Spurs are indoors,
but they move. It's one of those stadiums with a field that shifts in.
I don't care about the turf. I care about the dome versus
the turf affects the pass rush potentially.
Oh, if it's slippery, yeah, that could hurt us. That's all right. We'll go less than for Sam Darnold. So T. Higgins, Rome Odunze, and Sam Darnold. More receiving yards for T. Higgins, more than 57.5, less than 231.5 for Sam Darnold, and then more than 36.5 receiving yards for Rome Odunze. Did I go out of order? Did I use the wrong order, guys? I apologize.
You did. Yeah, you did.
I know he told me the order to go in,
yeah,
and
you
then
still went your own way. That's fine.
I used the order in the printout, and I I'm sorry.
I mean, look, he's going to have to learn at some point that you simply don't listen to instructions and do whatever you want anyway.
I screwed up again. Is that minus 0.5 in the grading scale for us?
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
It is Spurs Stadium for whatever that matters.
So that's making me rethink things. It's got me rethinking everything for Sam Darnold. But yeah, that's my lineup this week. Look, I'm 1 for 1. My lineup. What could go wrong here?
What could go wrong?
Yeah. Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You can download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CheckTheMic, get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CheckTheMic. Prize Picks, $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. So, here we go. We're having a lot of fun. Join the Discord as well to play along here.
Now, you don't get any points for this if it comes in because it's only 3. These the grading system specified 4 Prize Picks to come in.
Yeah, but that was because we had the free square last week with
right.
Caleb
But
Williams.
now he's expecting you to stand on your own 2 feet.
I'm just playing 3. You get something for this. It might not be a +2. It's at least a plus 1.5.
Coward.
If we get the 3. We have anything else to discuss today? Did we forget anything?
That's what we have, except to say there are some things on the website that we should send people to.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole world of people that listen to our show here or watch our show here on YouTube and have no idea that there is a 33rd Team website, the33rdteam.com.
With some great content every single week.
With some outstanding content by some top-tier people. So we have, for example, Kyle Crabb's latest mock draft is out there, crushing it, because let's face it, it's October the 2nd, and Jags fans are already thinking about the draft.
Dude, don't call people out. But yeah, it's mock draft season for sure.
Miami fans. Look, there's a lot of teams out there that are thinking,
listen, fan bases, you know who you are if you're looking for mock drafts right now, and we have it.
Maybe I'll take a scan at Travis Hunter this weekend. That's all I'm saying. Tyler Brook is out here with potential trade spots for Devontae Adams, like we did on the show today. Ari Meroff is saying that we should have seen this Devontae Adams situation coming on the website. He's got a little breakdown there. Dan Pizzuto's quarterback rankings are out there as well. They're well worth a read. And then the final thing I would throw out there in terms of scanning for your enjoyment is Marcus Mosher's power rankings. So that's worth checking out as well. Anyway, point being, whole world of fantastic content up on the website that you guys might not know exists. So go check it out.
The33rdteam.com. Go check it out right now. Great content every single day. And we appreciate everybody for being here, as always, on our Wednesday show. Tomorrow, it's the usual 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We're live right here on YouTube. It's your Week 5 NFL preview. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow with more Check the Mic.